Well, here's a very interesting story coming out of the intersection of politics and Hollywood. Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton has outlined a plan to, quote, ban Chinese investment in Hollywood. Now, he has a gigantic, document here laying everything all out, but we're not going to go through really every little thing here. There's a lot of things that he talks about that I don't think is a good idea. Without further development of our pipelines, in particular, him talking about semiconductors and things like that and cutting them off. Yeah, he talks about decoupling, higher education, entertainment, semiconductors, telecoms. If we look at just the entertainment from page 34, it looks like. Imagine having, geez, who reads all this? I guess I do. I suffer for you. It says, much like the higher education system, the United States entertainment industry is the envy of the world. At their best, Hollywood movies, TV shows, and other productions represent American culture and the values to the world. They can reveal the rot at the heart of the world's most repressive regimes and exercise their freedom to criticize their own government. The CCP, like other totalitarian movements, view entertainment, the arts, and sports as a means to maintain social control at home and export propaganda abroad. In 2014, Xi Jinping said that the cultural work should only exist to serve politics, paraphrasing Mao and Stalin. Xi said, arts and literature is the engaging that molds the human soul. Arts and literary workers are the engineers of the human soul. The CCP's censorship of the U.S. productions, then, is not simply a reaction measure to ensure the regime security, but part of China's grander ambitions for global ideological competition. There are things that you talk about that people don't know, like how China owns China owns 49% of AMC Theater. They own a lot of theaters here. You see some of the particular calls out here. This via Bounding into Comics. Cotton shared an 84-page plan called the Beat China, targeted decoupling and the economic long battle to Twitter, where he stated the Chinese Communist Party's lied, stolen, and killed its way to the top. America needs a plan to beat the new evil empire. For years, Hollywood justified its presence in China by arguing that it served a greater good, by giving the Chinese people access to films made in the free world. Hollywood did not succeed in changing China. Instead, it became addicted to the Chinese money and responsive to CCP control. Cotton goes on to detail that the CCP, like other totalitarian movements, views entertainment, the arts, and sports as a means to maintain social control at home and export propaganda abroad. These are inarguable. These are absolutely the way that these things are viewed and executed. But I don't know how you necessarily decouple it, especially long term. To hit this, he talks about the election. The CCP is intent on subverting the power of American movies and television in the short term. Its ultimatum is to overthrow Hollywood as the world's cinematic powerhouse, replacing it with a Chinese entertainment and media industry that can suppress all content critical of the CCP and engineer a world safe for autocracy. In order to prevent this from happening, Cotton's report states that the federal government should ban Chinese investment in U.S. studios and streaming services. He also calls on American companies to divest from Chinese sources and dissolve existing joint ventures. The government would also prohibit Chinese investment in platforms that show movies and TV shows in the United States, such as movie theater companies and cable and broadband television providers. To that end, he calls the government to require AMC theaters to separate from Dalian Wanda. The Chinese company, according to the Hollywood Reporter, owns 58.8% of the voting power in AMC stock, despite owning much less than 50% of the actual company. Cotton notes that these actions would limit the CCP's ability to directly control American entertainment, that would not prevent Beijing from using its market access to compel U.S. companies to comply with CCP censorship. We see this all the time with Disney in particular. And I think most of the time you see these companies bending the knee, it's gone. It goes without notice. It's done before we ever see the product. But this is not just a U.S. like Hollywood type thing. This is also extraordinarily prevalent in video games. We saw the big controversy with Blizzard last year with their admonishment of a pro Hong Kong player to clearly satisfy Chinese investors. It goes on to say, in order to address the problem, he wants the United States to prohibit the DoD, the CIA, and the FBI from supporting any television and film studios that allow content they release in the U.S. market to be censored by the CCP. Still, he believes these policies will be limited if Hollywood does not commit to resisting and the malign foreign influence. In order to help Hollywood resist this influence, as Cotton puts it, he wants the federal government to work with Hollywood executives to raise awareness about the CCP's systemic campaign to manipulate, infiltrate, and capture its studios. Well, here's the thing. You're just never going to get them off that teat. You're just never going to get Hollywood off that teat, especially since so many in the West have decided to stop going to the movies, stop supporting a lot of these studios. We saw earlier today where theaters are now resisting or hiding. In fact, let's pull that up real quick. That theaters are hiding their box office numbers. Why? Well, I don't think it's because they're great. I don't think they're doing great. Hollywood studios ask and top guilds ask President Biden for assistance. Why don't you ask China, since they're so important to you? And I can't find that article, but I posted it earlier today where they just started hiding their box office numbers. And here you see, AMC, New York City movie theaters to reopen at 25% capacity. Too late, I would argue. These things have been shut down forever when at the very minimum you could have put things in place to allow for social distancing and allow for, good cleanliness and keeping everything like that. I don't think that these theaters will ever be the same that they were. And I don't think that people are going to support them like they used to. Now, does that mean that they can't automatically make up that money in, streaming? No. I mean, they can. So here you go. Conceal box office. More Hollywood studios start to conceal box office grosses. In the latest twist, Searchlight Pictures did not provide any numbers at all for Nomadland when the Oscar hopeful expanded nationwide over the weekend. More and more Hollywood studios are concealing their box office grosses amid the lockdowns and ongoing theater closures, saying they don't want to be unfairly judged for numbers that in, quote, normal times would be considered anywhere from tepid to abysmal. In the latest twist, Searchlight did not even send a Sunday note to the press when Chloe Zhao's Nomadland expanded to more than 1,100 theaters in the United States. The Oscars hopeful was the only new wide release of the frame after playing in select IMAX theaters in 3 previous weekends, those whose numbers were also kept under wraps. Ditto for A24, which did not send a press note Sunday with any numbers for awards contender Minari, which is playing in 140 locations. Otherwise, studios such as Universal, Disney, and Paramount have continued to report numbers in normal, transparent fashion through the lockdowns that include Universal's specialty division and Searchlight rival Focus Features. I don't think that this is a sign that things are going amazing. You have, The Little Things and Judas and the Black Messiah with estimated 1.2 million and 905,000 respectively. It's crazy that we're talking about movies that would have been making hundreds of millions are making 1 million. It's like, are they even making money? Are they even making money by sending this out? Now, the biggest box office news overseas, where theaters in China continue to rebound in a major way, buoyed by the Lunar New Year holiday. Both Detective Chinatown 3 and Hi Mom cleared the 600 million mark to join the country's top grossing films of all time. IMAX's share alone of DC3 is 33 million, and the film became the third highest grossing in local language. People are going back to theaters in China, consuming the content, but they're not going in the United States, and I don't think they're ever going to come back. Without a major change, they're going to have to reach out to the buyers, to the viewers. They're going to have to give us reasons to go. We're going to have movies that, you know, don't hate us, and actors that don't hate us. It's possible. You know, this goes back to Tom is not alone in seeing the threat of the CCP in Hollywood. Ted Cruz introduced a bill called the Script Act back in May 2020. The bill's goal is to limit or prohibit Department of Defense resources being used to help movie theaters, which I 100% agree with. It specifically states that the Secretary of Defense may not include technical support or access to any asset controlled by the department if the film is co-produced by an entity located in the People's Republic of China and is subject to the conditions on content imposed by the official of the government of the People's Republic of China. Essentially saying, if you're going to censor your films for China, we're not going to give you taxpayer dollars. I don't see how anyone would be against that. So American cinema may be in its roughest spot ever. The transition from movies to content is nearly complete, and I don't see them ever recovering. And for a lot of reasons, that's pretty depressing. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.